Pretty aggressive agenda.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. Today is Friday, April 12th. I'm Mitchell Englander, Chairman of the committee, and I'm joined by the Honorable Council Member Joe Buscaino from the Great 15th.
Good morning.
Good morning. I know Mr. Zine is on his way. Talked to him this morning. Since we don't have a quorum yet of the committee, we can't yet take any public comment cards officially in accordance with the Brown Act, although we will open public comment up as soon as we have a quorum. If there are any speakers here in the room that wish to fill out a comment card, please do so now. Turn it in for either any of the items that are on the agenda, or if you could, for public comment as well, and we can jump right on those as soon as we have a quorum. And then with that, we've got a number of items that we're going to hear on consent, a number of items we're going to take together, and a few items that we're going to continue. So it'll be the discretion at this point of the chair for consent on items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So items on consent, 1, 2, 3.
Can I pull at number 2? I just had a couple questions.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Council members, good morning. John White. Item 10 has a CAO report that was submitted out for the publication of the agenda. Do you wish to approve that report as part of your action?
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you.
And right now it'll be at discretion of the chair. We'll reopen that up.
Item 2?
Or we'll reopen all the items on consent as soon as we have a quorum as well.
Yes, sir.
And then item 2 we'll go ahead and hold.
Item 2.
So it'll be items 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on consent. At this point with the communication from the chair. With that, we're going to hear items first, and we're going to take these together if we could. And if we can read these into the record first before we get started. Items 4, 11, and 12, 17, 18, and 20.
Item 4, Board of Police Commissioners report relative to extending the term of the 2009 Los Angeles Smart Policing Project grant from the United States Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance. And we have a staff here for that. Is that item 4?
Actually, I'm sorry, 4 we're going to take last.
Okay. Item 11?
And we're not going to take that together. Item 11, 12, 17, 18, and 20 together.
Okay. Item 11.
I apologize.
LAFD report relative to the Task Force on Information and Data Analysis. Item 12, Board of Fire Commissioners report relative to an analysis of the Fire Department deployment plan pursuant to motion LaBonge Englander. Item 17, motion Zine Englander instructing the Fire Department to report relative to the methodology used to calculate emergency response times and the factors that contribute to any changes in the methodology. Item 18, Fire Department to report relative to the capabilities of the technology platforms currently being used by the Department, an analysis of the solutions that would be necessary to meet the operational objectives of the Department in the context of FireStat LA, operational plan for frequent management meetings, and a timeline for implementation. And item 20, budget motion instructing the Fire Department to report relative to the Department's dispatch policy and efforts made to ensure adequate station coverage while also addressing overall deployment and any budget impacts.
Excellent, thank you. If I can please have Fire Department representatives or commissioners please step forward. If I could, before you open it up, gentlemen, first, good morning. Thank you very much. Let's ensure, if we could, I know you've got presentations already well prepared and planned, and I appreciate you being here this morning. I know you're all busy, and Chief Cummings, Commissioner Scobin, Chief Butler, thank you very much for coming this morning. But if you could ensure that we cover, in fact, all the items, since we've called them all together, and at least touch on those as well. So, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We'd like to start out with what we think is the foundation of the items, and that is the work of the task force and FireStat LA. I call it the foundation because we believe that our number one priority when the task force was assembled is literally sifting through millions of pieces of data, looking at the system and finding out, is there a problem? And while there was a problem, the good news is it was fixed by the task force. The task force had no budget. It was a number of very talented people from within the LA Fire Department with the assistance of ITA, pro bono work from wonderful people from RAND and USC, and the involvement of the Fire Commission. We were able to fix the problem. We were able to make some improvements where we believe we have reliable data, and that's the foundation upon which this is launched. The task force had two components. The first was the data in the CAD system, and the second was FireStat LA. I know that's near and dear to your heart because when I became a new commissioner, the councilman pulled me aside and said, I want to talk to you about something that you have to commit to me that you're going to work on, and that's FireStat LA. I made that commitment, and I think you're going to hear today that the fire department is delivering on that commitment for you and for the public. So the first part of it was the data, where we had the crew that worked tremendous hours, and we also had support from First Watch and other vendors, and we're able to fix the data problem, which is very important because people have to have confidence in the integrity of what we're telling them. And I believe that today you can have confidence in the numbers that come out. The second part of it is the business practices. So what I'd like to do is shift to FireStat LA, which is really a natural product that flowed from the data. And we actually have the deliverables now. The deliverables will affect the department initially and what it will allow us to do, other members of the city family and what they can see and help me make decisions, and then push out the fire station. So I'd like to ask Chief Butler to talk a little bit about that portion, and then we'll go back to the other portion.
Great, thank you very much. And if I could just take a second before we jump into that and get into the technical aspects, I think it's important to recognize your work, Commissioner Scobin, on this and the fact that you have been extremely focused and a true leader on this in establishing the task force and working with the department and the chief and all the chiefs, quite frankly. And I think the public really has to acknowledge the work and the effort, the dedication, and the focus that you've put into this has been tremendous. We will be a better city and a better department because of all the efforts that you've put into this, and you have to be applauded and thanked and recognized, and I truly appreciate it. The quick historic overview without going into too much details, we all know we had a lot of problems with the department, both in our PR, but more importantly, quite frankly, in response times and the data. And looking at the solutions to a lot of these efforts over the years has been, and we all know that the fire department financially has been decimated with the current budget crises and what all cities are facing, quite frankly, throughout the country. And we're not unique from that, and we're not immune. And with that, there's been a tremendous push over the years to try to restore a lot of those efforts and finances. But with that came a lot of questions, and where's the money go? How are the response times treated? What are we doing for deployment? How are communication efforts being repaired and replaced? What's the culture of the department? And looking at different models, what I started doing before a lot of this, if you will, became public, and from my experience with LAPD, is looking at different models like CompStat, and what we can do to improve the fire department, make sure that you have the resources and tools, that we've got a foundation and a baseline of transparent data that can be verified, which is absolutely critical. And then enters Chief Cummings and Alan Scobin and Chief Butler to the rescue, if you will, to get to the bottom line of how do we fix the problem? How do we identify real data issues and make sure our tracking systems are in place so we can analyze and drill down, create dashboards of transparency, and ensure that when we do put funds back in, which is my hope in this current budget, as we start coming out slowly out of this recession, we know exactly not only what we're funding, but where it's going and how we're going to improve that dialogue and, more importantly, the response times for the city, and make sure the tools and the resources are given to the department that are justified. And so I truly appreciate all your efforts. And Chief Butler, if you will.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, council members. Assistant Chief Patrick Butler, Special Operations Division. And I'd like to talk a little bit about FireStat LA and what it was we embarked on. A year ago this month, Councilmember, you put forward a motion to bring forward FireStat LA and use leadership and best practices from other organizations to bring technology to our department. What we've done since that time is we've taken a hard look at the data and ensure it was accurate. And FireStat LA had 5 core components for us. And one was to implement real-time data analysis tools in order to report accurately and timely data. Secondly, implement leadership and accountability strategies that use data and other metrics to drive continuous process improvements in our organization. Implement a consistent format for dialogue across the organization where we could take and share best practices organizationally with our command officers down to the firefighters. And develop a method for disseminating this information organizationally. Finally, we'd like to have a public transparency component of this that will have a website that'll be able, the public will be able to view and see this data and also hear these reports frequently in the commission meetings and the public safety meetings. So setting off with that agenda, we've put together a suite of tools. What I'll talk about today is what we have done in the area of operations, the emergency response side, and how we've implemented technology right now that allow us to monitor our performance and identify gaps and areas that we can improve performance. So if I may, I'm going to step away from the microphone for a bit and I'll set up a display over here. Poster boards, you have copies of the presentation, if that's okay, sir.
Excellent, thank you.
And I'll speak up so they can capture me on the...
That won't work, so we're going to have to, if we can get a volunteer to hold the microphone. Brian, you can hold the microphone.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Got it.
There you go, Brian. Oh, okay.
So basically, what I'm going to show you is a screenshot. These are the actual gauges that we currently see today on our system. But I'll talk about what we're going to measure. We measure from the time the call comes into our LAFD dispatch center, being a secondary public safety access point, to the time that it gets sent to a fire station that equates to our turnout time and how quickly we get to your address. And so we look at call processing, dispatch assignment, how long it takes us to actually put together the assignment and then launch the assignment to the fire station. The fire station then receives the call, has 60 seconds to get out the front doors and rolling, and then these tools will also measure our response time, our on-scene time, our hours worked, our transport times, and all the other metrics that firefighters and paramedics do out there every day. And so this is a way to quantify that information. So I'll look at the call processing, communication side, and then the operations side. So what we have, First Watch is a partner in our department who does surveillance of our data, and they've built a suite of tools for FireStat LA. And what this dashboard is, an actual dashboard that commanders will be able to have today in their fire station. We can log on even on an iPad that will lay out what is our performance in the area of call processing, our performance current, month to date, year to date, a range of dates. If you wanted to pick out a timeline that you wanted to analyze, it's all available here. And so this is a basic snapshot that a commander can set up on their desktop. It's web-based, doesn't need any special software to run. But then they could drill down individually into each one of these gauges. The next item will be the operations side, and this is, we've talked a lot about what can field commanders use to look at the gaps in their battalion and improvements they can make or areas that they need to kind of have watch outs. And every battalion today has the ability now, once we roll this out in our trial program, but these tools exist right now, that a battalion can then monitor each fire station's performance in turnout time, response time, workload demand analysis in their battalion, and begin to provide that feedback not only back to their commanders, to the community, and to the chief of the department that can speak to some areas that maybe we can improve in and some areas that we just have some weaknesses or gaps that we need to shore up. So there's an operational component, and you can see individual fire stations and drop-down tags, but So the basic view will be gauges, followed by detail maps and drill downs, which I'll show next. So each one of these gauges has the ability to lay out a workstation, a workplace layout, where you can then just use spatial software and plot on maps. You can export this data to Excel, Google Earth, or other analysis tools, or if you just want to get spatial orientation of where your calls are and what calls are taking you longer to get to, it lays it out on a map. So it has some very good visual tools here. Sometimes the data you look at may be somewhat confusing or complex, but if you lay it on a map and overlay, you get a better sense. It is also de-identified, so it's HIPAA compliant. So we also want to make sure that some of the data that we show to our command staff, or if the public will request information, that we had de-identified, protect personal health information. And then the last component will be the management reports. Those are the static reports that commanders, the field, the council, the public may ask periodically, whether it's for an environmental impact report they need some information for. But each one of those gauges then can export this information to a number of different platforms, whether you want to use bar graphs, a demand analysis. This, for instance, shows when we do our most transport of patients. We approximately do 400 to 500 transports a day, and it shows you the time of day, day of week that you have most demand on your organization. And you can also do demand analysis by day, week, month, year, and it'll show kind of when your peak calls are and also give you an average. And then finally, you can do individual performance of each unit, and you can export this all out to a management report that could be printed and handed to somebody, and then be able to do some historical analysis and also for reports. So the portion of FireStat LA that we have online that's available today to our commanders is what I've shown you here today. And we'll be able to take these tools and roll them out to the field. Probably our rollout method will be to pick a battalion pilot program and get feedback, because if there's anything that firefighters and paramedics are very good at is looking at something and telling you what works or doesn't work. They're really good at you throw them a problem and they'll immediately be able to tell you what areas they would like to see improvements in. Ultimately, these tools are for them to do their job and make their job easier so they can respond quicker to the public.
So that's the one side of FireStat LA, which is really CAD-based data, and that is a deliverable today. And we're very proud of that accomplishment. We think we delivered. There's a second side to it that is equally important, and that is really the business practices side. And what we've done in the task force, and by the way, we've invited a representative from UFLAC and a representative from the Chief Officers Association to sit at the table and be part of what I'm about to tell you, because we want their input, their suggestions, and we want them to be part of the process as we roll it out. What we've done is, through the task force, Captain Rich Fields did a great job. He identified the various databases that we rely on, and we picked 15 different databases that are sources of information. Everything from the critical incident application to the assignment tracking, electronic patient care reports, complaint tracking, injury, financial management, fire prevention, inspections, training, complaints, traffic collisions, and there are all these databases, some maintained by the fire department, some maintained by ITA. We reached out to ITA, to June Edson, who was very cooperative and will be working with us, so that as we identify the things that we want to measure, if they're domiciled in ITA, they'll help us figure out how to access them. If they're domiciled in the fire department, we'll figure that part out. So we've asked the chief officers, what is it that you as a manager of the fire department would like to measure, that you'd like to see that you can use as a management tool? And we're putting that data together. We're getting the input from the field. As I said, I have a UFLAC at the table. And then just general research in the field. As we go to fire stations and talk to fire personnel, we're putting together a list of those things that we think should be measured. Not everything needs to be in the FireStat LA report. Some things may be in different reports we generate from various levels of the department. But but we're going to say, what is the baseline at the station level? What should a captain at the station level be looking at? Example would be turnout time. Today, they're not seeing their turnout time. Yet turnout time is one of the things that they can impact. And we're hoping that there'll be a sense of camaraderie and pride in wanting to improve that once they know what it is. Recognize we never want them to cut corners where safety is involved. And that's always something that management is careful to look at in anything we do, and the firefighters hopefully are careful to look at too. But there are things that we can affect, and we want them to know what those are. We don't intend to use this as a stick. Okay, we intend to use this as a mentoring and a learning and a sharing tool. And I talked about some of the areas, whether it be training or community involvement, traffic collisions, all the different things that we want to measure that we could do something about by putting them on our screen. So Chief Butler, by the way, who's been a great partner in this, and I can't say enough good things. Also, Commission President Hudley Hayes is here, who's been another great thinking partner and a great support. And I have to tell you, I can't say enough good about her. She's just fabulous and has been just a great partner and a great leader for the Fire Commission. And her presence here today, she came in just for this, should tell you a lot about how important this is to the fire department. We're moving forward. We don't have a budget. Okay? Almost all of this was done out of the height of the fire department by taking people who are already busy. Somehow they come, they meet, they work, we meet again. They've accomplished a lot in the interim because you've got some very dedicated people. A small amount of money was found to help us fund the First Watch project. This is where I'm asking you to partner with us. One of the things we want to do right now, because as Chief Butler said, there are three components. There's the component that will be internal. There's the public-facing website, which the Chief has been our biggest advocate on. And then there's the media side. We don't want the media to have to sit there and do public records request after public records request. This is public information. We want to be open about it. And we actually want to take HIPAA-compliant data and push it out to where they can have it. We don't need to hide anything, and we don't want to hide anything. So that's one thing we want to do. But the one that we are going to need some funding for is the public-facing website. That takes money. We know what we want. We know how to put it together, but there needs to be dollars, and right now the fire department doesn't have dollars. So we're going to be coming to you to ask you to champion that, so any member of the public can look at it and see what equipment's available in their area, what are the resources, what is the response time in their area, and other data that we think is important to the public, again, to have confidence in the fire department.
Give us a budget. Done.
Yeah.
We'll fight for that.
Okay, so we need you to fight for it and to win. So that's really where we are. And again, we think we've delivered a lot, but we have a lot more to deliver. But the business practices are a very important part of what we're doing. And again, this has been done, basically, out of the height of the department by very busy people.
Without getting into all the details, and I know there were a lot of issues going into it to try to figure out some of the problems. Do we start measuring? By the way, we're joined by Councilman Dennis Pizine as well. Good morning. There were some problems where we identify, is it the call that first comes into 911? Is it the call that takes a minute perhaps to get to the fire department once they analyze who it needs to be routed to? Is it the button issue on scene when the engine pulls up and the company pulls up to hit the button? I mean, have a lot of those issues been resolved? And have we focused on some new protocols and practices and what we're going to be doing to solve some of those issues?
That's part of the process. We all know, and I call this, the 10,000-pound elephant in the room, that we're measuring the calls when we receive them. Right. But there's a period of time prior to the time we receive them, right? That today, if somebody calls in to get the police department, then the police department screens it, understands that it's a fire or an emergency services call involving health, and then they turn it over to us. And that we can't measure, and that's part of what I talked about at City Council. I believe we need to look at that and say, how do we improve that? Because the public, they care about when they pick up the phone and call 911 when somebody's at their scene.
That's right.
And when we talk about how every minute is critical in terms of saving lives and what it means, and we have what I'm told is about a half a second on the average that's lost because it goes into one place and is transferred, I think that we have to put a lot of effort to try to fix that problem, because that does equate to safety and people losing their lives.
And can we touch on VLS and how that's one of the motions in the package as well, and how that will affect the vehicle locator systems?
If we could, that'll be a different focus we'll talk about.
Okay, we'll bring up after.
So that's our portion.
Right.
I know you have other items to talk about.
We do.
Also, I know the chief would like to make some comments after we cover the substantive projects like this in VLF.
Fantastic.
And just you asked to tie them all together, those 5 items, Councilman Engler, and item 11, we talked about the IDA task force's work and how they ensured that we have that accurate data and that we have accurate reporting of that data, and we're there now. We're very confident. We have 100% confidence in that. Item number 12 talked about using that accurate data to do detailed analysis of what it is we do, the inputs and outputs and outcomes of the department. And we're doing that analysis now with our First Watch tools, and what we'll be pushing out, first looking at the CAD data and then at our business practices moving forward. Item 17, we'll be reporting response time more closely to the caller's experience. So from the time we get it from the primary public safety access point to the time we get a unit on scene. So as Commissioner Scobin pointed out, we're not capturing that first piece from the LAPD when they take the call, but we're giving them everything else so that it's more closely related to their experience. And then as we develop that public-facing website, the public will have that access to what's the response time in my district to my address. Item 18 talked about Fire Stat LA and becoming data-driven, making those business decisions, deployment decisions based on the data, tempered by experience, and being able to assess the risks in a community and let our company commanders develop business plans to mitigate those risks, to make healthier, more resilient, more prepared communities out there so that the public safety is higher. And then the last piece, I think number 20, was the big one. It talks about what we're going to do with this data, and it talks about how our deployment needs to be dynamic. We need to look at the data, look at the type and frequencies of calls, and make sure that our resource footprint in those 106 work locations matches the type and frequency of calls in those districts, and that we have the right type of resource, an ambulance or a fire company responding to the right type of call, making sure that the fire department's deployment matches what our business is. And 85% emergency medical service is what we do. Close to 357,000 times last year we responded for calls for a medical service. So making sure that we're deployed in a manner that provides that highest level of public safety. So that's why the 5 pieces, we asked to have them bundled together, because they all speak to that data-driven decisions, data-driven business model, data-driven deployment, very dynamic deployment.
All right, thank you very much. It's, we've gone through a lot of meetings over the last year in this committee, and certainly publicly in the media, out in the field, with firefighters and paramedics, and neighborhood councils, all the stakeholders. There's been a lot of scrutiny, a lot of critiques, a lot of critics on the department. And I got to tell you, you guys really stepped up. And we've gone and are going from modern, cutting-edge 1984 technology to 21st century department, a leading department in the country, the first ever that will be doing anything remotely close to this. We've gone from this archaic, draconian system of hand-keying information into Excel databases that took months to get reports back on, and oftentimes weren't necessarily accurate based on so many different issues and flaws in the system. We've put Band-Aid solutions in place to try to fix it, and then scrapped all that, sent it to triage, and now we're on, and went from life support to a healthy system, if you will. That's incredible, and have done so with no budget, while still continuing the day-to-day efforts and the struggles, given the restraints that you've had financially as well. And so I want to applaud, again, Alan Scobin, all your work and your leadership, and Chief Butler, but really to you, Chief Cummings. I had said about a year ago, when really this started coming out publicly and we started learning a lot more about the problems, it's time for our fire chief to either step out or step up. You've gone beyond stepping up. In your leadership, we would not be where we're at today, and looking at revolutionizing and becoming a world-class model of a fire department without your dedication and leadership. And I applaud your efforts. And I'd also, if I could, since the president's still here, the commission, Ms. Hayes, if I can ask you to come up and just say a few words, if you could, before we get into, if that would be okay. Because I know it's been a lot of your leadership as the president of the commission as well. I know you're shy, but and often not opinionated, but if you could share a little bit of your thoughts as well.
Thank you very much, Councilman Englander, for allowing me an opportunity to simply say that I'm here this morning because one of the things that I am so encouraged by with the Public Safety Committee is your demonstrated concern about making sure that the fire department becomes that kind of a dynamic new business model that we're all looking for in the public sector so that it can be efficient, but that it can be effective, and it can meet the changing realities. There's never going to be a time anymore in the city of Los Angeles where there's going to be one reality. The realities are going to change, they're going to continue to change, the demographics are going to shift, they're going to continue to shift. We're going to have to be able to make sure that we're looking at the business community as it relates to public safety. And I think that this FireStat LA will be the kind of a tool that the Commission needs to know about, that we need to be supporting, that we need to be making sure that we move this forward. The Commission actually needs to be here. Both Commissioner Scobin and I are here. Commissioner Scobin, because he is the liaison for the Commission because of the skills that he brings to this whole discussion and this work. I'm here to make sure that all of you on the Public Safety Committee understand how committed we are to making sure that you get everything that you need so that you have really trust in what's going on as a result of the questions that you ask, as a result of what you want to see in terms of a new model. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak this morning, but that's really why you see the presence of not just Commissioner Scobin, but why I'm here this morning as well, why the fire chief is here this morning, and actually to thank you, because I think that you did create the opening and the opportunity for this kind of a thing to happen, which is a much needed kind of investigation, kind of conversation that goes on so that we can make sure that the city is going to be safe well beyond, hopefully, when any of us will be doing these jobs, hopefully well beyond when I will be doing this job. But that's really and truly what we should all be working for. And my last comment is so that this committee understands the teaming that goes on with a commission and with the department that it is responsible for oversight, management, and looking at the practices and the policies. There is a teaming that goes on with this fire commission and with the fire chief and with the fire chief's administration.
Thank you very much. And before we bring up some of our other panelists, if you will, to speak on some of the other issues, I'd like to open it up to some of my colleagues for any statements or questions or comments or concerns, and also welcome Mr. Kokorian as well. Good morning.
I'll start off. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your leadership on this as well. And I just want to also point out and echo what Mitch said about the progress that's being made from all angles. The commission, the fire department. Progress is good. But I'll say this: I won't rest easy until this plan, LA CompStat, FireStat, is implemented. Even more so in hearing what just this recent turn of events, specifically in my district, that we're familiar with. As we know, every second counts, but I just want to reiterate progress is good, but we need to fully implement this, and we owe it to our residents. But I'm also even more so encouraged by the transparency and the commitment to transparency for all levels of our city, from the media also to our residents, because we owe it to them as well. My question is the department, where is the department on developing a comprehensive plan to address the implementation of AVL data sharing and the CAD replacement? And secondly, will the new system be easier to understand and more user-friendly, thus cutting back from human error?
Item number 19 addresses the AVL, and we'll have staff come up to speak to that, and that same staff can talk. In fact, Chief Butler can let you know where we're at with our current RFP process for the CAD.
Very good. Yes, Councilmember. We're moving forward with the computer-aided dispatch RFP. We have a team that's put together from various personnel from the department, and we hope to have the RFP out by the end of May. And the RFP for CAD will involve getting the latest technology out there for our computer-aided dispatch system that will allow us to have some other integration with systems out there, but it'll be one of the core components. But to give you an update with that piece is that by the end of May we should have an RFP out to the public so they begin to bid on a new system for us. And progress has been made on that. We have a team. We've been meeting every Thursday to discuss the development, and it is a pretty significant document at this point. It is, I would say, it's not light reading, if I could, but that's where we're at with it
And,
now.
you know, colleagues, we need to be reminded that, you know, in light of this upcoming budget season, we need to support our fire department as well. It's great to know that on this committee you have the chair of budget, the vice chair of budget, so, you know, we're asking them. So noted, right? Yeah. So let's be cognizant of that. We're putting a lot of demands on the fire department, yet we also need to be sure that we need to keep them afloat and getting prepared for the budget season here.
And by the way, because you've alluded to the police department a couple of times, we're not doing this work in a total vacuum. Chief Beck and Maggie Goodrich at LAPD have been very generous in loaning people to us and consulting with us, so that we don't have to reinvent all the wheels. They've been very, very helpful to us, and they've been a great partner as well.
Very good.
And the last thing on that, Councilman, is that realizing that we're moving forward with a state-of-the-art CAD system here in the city of Los Angeles, I've reached out to Los Angeles County Fire Department, Long Beach Fire, and Verdugo Dispatch. The four of us comprise most of the Los Angeles County area. And the three other fire chiefs and I have agreed, and we're moving forward on identifying grant funding so that we can have a CAD consultant, a regional CAD consultant. Each of them are in the market for a new CAD system as well. So we're sharing with them our RFP, and we're making sure that the RFPs they put forward envision that interconnected system. And further, we're looking at how we can implement fixes now to connect those CADs, to have a CAD to CAD connectivity. So that's an ongoing conversation. I've met with the chiefs 3 times, and in fact, we're meeting again next week to finalize that vision for how that's going to look.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for those comments. And if I could just respond to you as well, Councilman, don't mistake my enthusiasm for resolution on this at all. This is simply putting the wings on the plane, if you will. It's not yet taken off. There's still a tremendous amount of work to do. But with that, we also have on top of that an RFP that is now on the street where we're looking at best practices in emergency delivery services and in response times, in dispatch protocols. We're looking at all the Clausen protocols that we're dealing with as well, on top of what we're doing with from soup to nuts on how we deliver medical services, on what types of other practices are out there. We approved that in the budget last year. The RFP is out. It's being analyzed as we speak. So that's just yet another layer and a tool that the department and our policymakers can look at and marry to this. So,
well, look, we haven't arrived. We have a deliverable for you, which is one piece of what we're doing. But I want to respectfully remind Councilman Englander of what he said when we sat down and reviewed our initial report. And your words were, this is the first step in a major paradigm and culture shift. And that's really the comment that we go by. It's a first step, it's a major paradigm shift, and it's a major culture shift.
Sure.
That's what we're dealing with.
Great, thank you.
Just a couple. We talked about, in the past, calls on the border between LA and Glendale, LA and Burbank, whatever the case may be, and the interoperability. And what sparked the idea was you mentioned these other locations, these other departments that are now going to the new system or a CAD system, a modern CAD system. Does LA-RICS have any funds that can be utilized for some of this transition, since that's been lingering for 10 years? I see you frowning. It sparked that idea because we've talked about the EMS calls on the border between LA and another city, and then the interoperability and LA-RICS and the millions of dollars that have been put in LA-RICS. Can any of those funds be utilized for some of the programs?
Before we head into that, well, that's item 13, which we've continued, but if you could touch on that and the LA-RICS component, I think it would be really helpful.
If the LA-RICS dollars can be appropriated somehow to help with what we're talking about, since money is obviously an issue.
I can't speak to whether the LA-RICS dollars can be used for it, but having been in that process and seeing the delays that have been put in place there, decided instead to just act with the other fire chiefs and decide we need to move forward. We're all looking at CAD systems. We're working to identify what grant funding is out there, and if we could get some LA-RICS grant dollars, that would be good, but we're not going to wait for that process. We're going to move forward.
I'm not saying wait, I'm saying maybe we could tap into some of those dollars.
That'd be outstanding if we could, Councilman. We're looking at every option,
Okay.
but we're not going to be limited by what LA-RICS does.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying maybe we could utilize some of those dollars since there's millions that's been set aside for that, and since it's all jurisdictions that are going to the same place,
Certainly.
And we've got the issue on the borders, so maybe that would
It
be
makes
appropriate.
a complete sense to us, and we had that conversation with the chiefs and I as we were moving forward. And also, while I'm speaking with you, I wanted to thank you again for the tools and equipment that you gave to the 7 fire stations, close to $200,000 worth of power tools, hand tools that are going to save lives out in CD3. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you.
And with that, maybe we'll call for an update on LA-RICS at a very future meeting. I mean, that initiated in 1999. It's been 14 years, and I
But see,
think maybe it's time to get another update.
the problem is the money is sitting, it's been appropriated, and it's just...
Well, we'll schedule that,
Okay.
and I think it's a great idea.
I think-
That we'll do an update on that.
Put it
in
to
the
good use.
very near
Budget.
future. Absolutely.
Budget.
Well, thank you. I don't really have any questions. I just have a couple of quick comments. First, I want to congratulate Chairman Englander for being such a driving force in emphasizing the importance of performance measures across the city, and particularly in this department. And not just performance measures, but the tools that we need in order to measure performance. And the department has really stepped up in responding to that call. So I want to congratulate the department and the board as well. Whatever we do to squeeze efficiency out of the resources that we have through management techniques and the use of data, we have to do in the department and everywhere else. But the bottom line is the department's not big enough. And in response to Mr. Buscaino's point, let me just say, as the budget chair, that there's no higher priority for me in this city, as our economy recovers and as our budget begins to recover, than restoration of the fire department, which has been diminished far beyond my comfort level. And so no matter what we do in creating greater efficiencies, bottom line is we can't get where we need to go until the department is bigger. And I'm committed to making sure that we get to that point in coming years, and I'm looking forward to our 5-year plan for full restoration and so forth. But I also want to make the comment, when we look at response times in particular, I think it's important that the media and the public understand that sometimes there are delays in response times that aren't the result of not having enough firefighters. They aren't the result of not using data. They're the result of the fact that we have a fixed number of fire stations in a very large city that has a lot of traffic constraints and so on. And so there are going to be those tragic circumstances sometime when we can't get a first responder to an incident as quickly as we want. That's going to happen. And it doesn't matter what we use in terms of data, there are going to be those circumstances. So I think that it's important for the public to understand that there's progress that's being made, but it's never going to be perfect. And if that's the measure that we're going to be judged by, then we're never going to make that measurement. That's certainly the goal that I know the department strives for every day, but in the real world, when you have a fixed number of fire stations, you just aren't going to be able to improve response time beyond a certain point in a city of almost 4 million people that covers as much area as we have. So just want to remind everybody of that there are going to be tragic circumstances that come up. This department, I know, is deeply committed to making sure that our goal is that those don't happen. But we're never quite going to get to perfection. We just need to make sure that we continue to expand the department and continue to create the greatest degree of efficiency in managing those resources so that we minimize those incidents as much as we can.
Great. Thank you for your comments. And with that, and one of the things we've talked about in the department as well is the difference, though, now with FireStat LA and having the data in real-time analysis is that the ability in real time to do immediate after-action reports and look at if there's a particular incident because of a geographical problem or a traffic issue or engines in companies that were tied up or whatever that was. It's not 3, 4, 5, 6 months later or because we read it in the media or because somebody called a complaint. It's they know, and the command staff knows, the battalions know, the stations know exactly what happened that day at that particular incident so they can discuss ways to improve and enhance and fix it. And so that's what we're really talking about here as well. And if you want to touch on that, Chief.
That's happening now, by the way, as part of this project for the Chief, because I know he's very involved in this. Every day, Chief McCarthy gets a report of outliers. Calls me on a certain point, and I know the Chief's very involved in that too. So we are looking at that real time now. To understand that.
Yeah, we identify those issues and see if there's a systems issue, see if there's a human issue, or see if it's just, like the Councilman Krikorian said, geography that limits us. And that striving for perfection, if we get it right 99.9% of the time, with over 400,000 calls for service a year, that still leaves about 30 opportunities a month to get it wrong, which is a huge number, because these are critical incidents we're responding on.
Thank you very much. So with that, on those particular items, we'll go through that, but let's bring up, before we get closer to that, any other folks that are going to come up on talk of these items? Or
yeah, well, on item number 19, I can bring up staff to talk to you about ABL, give you a brief update on ABL.
Yeah, I didn't group that one together, so we kept it a little separate. So we'll take 19 next, but on item 4, what we'll do, let me see here. No, I'm sorry, item 11. I tend to go back to 4, don't I? Item 11, we'll go ahead and hold that in committee as well. On item 12, we can receive and file. On 17, we'll hold that as well. '18, we'll go ahead and approve. And 20, we can receive and file 20 as well. And with that, colleagues, we also on consent had 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We held 2 for Mr. Buscaino. And we'll go ahead and take item 19 now. Good.
Item 19, Fire Department to report on the potential implementation of automatic vehicle location technology for all fire and emergency resources, including an assessment of the system's costs, how the system would be overseen and managed by the Fire Department personnel, and how the system would be used to enhance emergency operations.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Kevin Ida from Los Angeles Fire Department. With me is Captain Xenophon Gigas from our Metro Fire Dispatch. After reviewing the agenda, we wanted to specifically address your questions. So again, this is a very high priority for Chief Cummings to improve our services to the citizens. AVL is extremely important and another important piece of our system to enhance the data that fire stat will receive. The project cost is $5.9 to $6 million. We've been working with the Mayor's Office to identify funds through the State 911 Fund, MICLA, and the General Fund. Question was on how the system will be managed, and this will be managed through our existing LAFD and ITA staff after receiving factory training from the vendors that will provide the services. So we'll be able to maintain this internally. And most importantly, how will the system enhance emergency operations? The system will reduce response times to get the closest vehicle on scene to improve patient outcome, reduce suffering, and reduce property loss. Improved resource management by providing real-time vehicle location, reducing call processing times, very importantly, improving 911 caller location capabilities so we can see where that person is that's calling, provide superior situational awareness by being able to see the incident, the caller, and the resources responding on the same screen. Currently, they're on different screens. We will also provide the ability to play back vehicle status and location for better post-incident analysis. Again, this is going to provide much greater accurate data for fire staff, so they work hand in hand.
Great, thank you very much. If I could just make a comment, I know this needs to first go to commission first as we're reviewing those, the specs on it. A lot of people have asked me why so much money for AVL. $6 million is a lot of money for GPS tracking of vehicles, particularly since you can log on now and online, either download a system or buy off-the-shelf systems for a vehicle. My daughter has it in her car, as you're all well aware. I know exactly where she is all the time, what speed she's going, and in any event, she loves when I remind people of that. But having said that, this is completely and totally different. It's similar, but where this is the fire department. And we've got to have assurances that, first of all, the system will never be down. It cannot be down. It has to have redundant systems in place. It has to have cybersecurity. It must have protections in place that people can't tap into, that it doesn't go to a third party, that it's direct to the department and only the department. That's critically important, that it cannot be hacked, and that it's always got to be reliable no matter what. If we're going to be relying on that to find out where our resources are and where they're deployed, where we're going to deploy from, because that can cause all kinds of unanticipated consequences. So in looking at it, a lot of the technology we're looking at, it's not off the shelf. This is future technology that is developed specifically for these types of applications. And so I appreciate all the information that you've given me. I've been schooled on a lot of the nuances and what we've got to look at in putting a system like this into place. So I truly appreciate it and look forward to this full report coming back to the committee once it's had the opportunity to go to the full Fire Commission. And any questions from my colleagues on this? Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and continue the item and hold it until it's gone through the RFP process, and it goes to the Fire Commission, and then it comes back to this committee, and then the full City Council, with the hope that we can implement this quickly. So, again, thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
We had two more items item number 15 on the false alarm fee. We can give you a brief update on that. And then item number 21, which was on the donation policy.
Appreciate you calling the next agenda items. Yes, I was about to. That's a command presence. All right, thank you, Chief. Well, with that, we'll take item 15 and then 21. All right, thanks.
15, budget motion instructing the fire department to report relative to a proposed false alarm fee.
Morning.
Good morning. Don Frazier, Assistant Fire Marshal. Over the last 30 years, through code adoption, we've been able to reduce the incidence of fire in the city of Los Angeles by almost 58%, and fire fatalities, correspondingly, 68%. The technology has had great impact on our actual calls, fires, but it's had a corresponding increase in the number of false alarms that we respond to. Right now, about 7% of the calls for service that we respond to in a year are for false alarms. So the false fire alarm fee is our proposal to deal with that very issue. In November of last year, we took a report to the Board of Fire Commissioners, and they've asked us to go back and look at false alarms in context of three possibilities. One was completely outsourcing. Number two would be a shared outsource, and number three, doing that ourselves. We're in the process of completing that analysis. We've met with Los Angeles Police Department to look how they work with Cry Wolf, and so we're packaging that information together, and then we'll be coming back to Fire Commission with that report.
And it's my understanding that there are a couple other cities, San Diego, Santa Monica, many others that have false alarm fees. And since they implemented the false alarm fees, false alarm for fire have gone down roughly 50% in those cities.
Yes, and our goal would be, we think we could reduce false alarms by that amount also. So in translation, that would be about 1,000 calls a month that we would no longer respond to.
And that's incredible. What's our timing? To get this to the next.
I think it's going to take us another 2, possibly 3 months to actually bring it and package it up for our Fire Commission. And then it would go through the committee process.
Would it be fair to say that we can go ahead and schedule it now for 90 days and then find out where we're at that point?
Sure.
Okay, we'll do that. And then, are there any questions from my colleagues on this as well?
Wait till it comes back.
Excellent. We'll wait till it comes back then. Thank you for the update. That brings us to
Item 16 or 21?
21.
Item 21, motion
16
Zion.
was continued.
What's that?
16 was...
I missed that, thank you. Item 21, motion Zion Buscaino, instructing the fire department to report relative to the process for accepting funds and donations from organizations seeking to assist the local fire stations and to report on potential improvements to the donation acceptance process.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and to the honorable members of the Public Safety Committee. My name is Armando Hogan. I am the Battalion Chief for the Los Angeles Fire Department, currently assigned as the Community Liaison Officer. My purpose here today is to provide you with a brief update of our donation process, and to answer any questions that you may have. In front of you is a packet with information regarding our process. It is in draft form, but will be completed soon. If I can direct you to the left side of that packet.
Can we advertise?
There you go. Very good. I don't know how that got in there, sir, but I knew you'd find it. Basically, the first page starts with community donations to the Los Angeles Fire Department. And it was a good conversation I had the other day with Councilmember Zine, who reminded me of the importance of expediting this process and making sure that the community that would like to donate to the fire department is clear on what that process is, and most importantly, we expedite that. So, also on that left side of your packet, we have the Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation grant request form. And that's what our members can use internally for if they need something that they feel, number one, is going to help them do their job better and provide better service. And last, on that left side of your packet, you see the W-9, where for those who donate to the fire department, we have something to assist them in writing off said donation. And of course, the Honorable Chair pointed out our bumper sticker, so feel free to put that on your vehicle.
How long has the foundation been in place?
A little bit over 2 years, sir. And with that, we have 40 fire stations that are in the Adopt a Fire Station program. And then in addition to that, we have about another 12 of our respective offices who range from our specialized units such as Youth SAR, Hazmat, who have different accounts. And all of those accounts are with the Fire Foundation.
Great, thank you. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Zine for any questions.
Okay, well, thank you. It's been 7 months since we put this request in. It came to me from citizens on the west side that can't understand why they have to deal with a foundation when they want to deal with the fire stations direct in their specific communities. We have Grateful Hearts, which we do in my district, where the businesses participate, where we give that money. It doesn't go to the foundation, to my knowledge. It goes directly to the stations. There was a lady in the San Fernando Valley, Valley Inn, Sophia and Boris. Traditionally, they've done on Sherman Oaks Avenue to Ventura Boulevard events raising money for the local fire stations, 88 some of the stations. So what came to me is people from the community say, like there's a special flashlight. It's $100 and some for the special flashlight that attaches to the turnout. The firefighters are paying for that out of their own pocket. These folks want to donate those flashlights, and what they got was the whole ring around. It came to me from these folks to say, look, all we want to do is we're not asking for any favors. We appreciate the firefighters. The police department used to have a really smooth process where people can donate, businesses can donate, not going through the foundation. They're not looking for a tax receipt. What they're trying to do is, out of the goodness of their heart, give equipment, not money, but give equipment that different stations need for different purposes. And the equipment that was able to donate, and we showed yesterday, Jaws of Life and a bunch of DeWalt saws and this and that, they're looking at items that they can use for their comfort and convenience. So I'm trying to figure out how we can adopt something similar to the police department, because I know the foundation costs money to operate and to run. They're just trying to say, let's go directly to the source. So if we can do the one on Hope Street, whatever the name of that is, Hope for Firefighters, where the businesses turn out, and it's a great fundraiser for the stations. And I know some districts don't have the same opportunity to raise the dollars. Some do. But these folks are from the community that say, look, all we want to do is give this stuff to the firefighters that need this, and we're getting this resistance, and we don't want to do this to the foundation. So how do we then take these items that they want to donate with no strings attached and say, thank you, we appreciate it, and they feel good, the firefighters get what they need, and everybody's happy. How do we accomplish that?
We have that process in place, and what that consists of is if they go to their local fire station
Okay.
and would like to donate, that station commander will give me a call as the person who oversees that operation. From there, after we have vetted that through the chain of command to make sure that that is an acceptable item we can take, but let's take the scenario that you raised, where it's equipment to better what they need to do in providing service, they can take possession of that, they can store it at the fire station, then they will submit a 225 through channels. One of the sticking points with our 225, which is our interdepartmental communication, was that you had to wait for the particular captain or chief on that shift to sign off on that. What we have done is eliminated that. Any chief officer can sign all the way up through the chain of command. Here's where we mirror LAPD, because it goes to Administrative Services Bureau with LAPD. In this case, it will go all the way up to our chief deputy in charge of emergency operations. So we get that same review to make sure that everything is okay. Then at that point in time, it comes to me, I prepare a board report. But in the meantime, they are allowed to take possession of said equipment because they do have the necessary approval.
So we do have a process in place.
Yes, sir, we do.
How long has that been in place?
That process has probably been in place about 5 months. The challenge is, sir, a lot of people want to give money to the fire station for that purpose, and that's why we say that cannot happen, and that has been the sticking point.
Well, I was very clear. It's not about money.
Yes,
It's about the items, the materials. We don't want to start getting into this money situation
Yes,
because
sir.
that creates all kinds of other problems. So as far as equipment, if it's been in place for 5 months, we can go forward with that. Mr. Chair, we could receive and file this. I just want to make sure that the good folks from the community that want to do that for their local fire stations can do that and feel good about it and not go through this, what we call bureaucratic red tape.
Yes, sir.
That really frustrates them. Then the firefighters say, hey, these people are just trying to help us, and then it's like they're ungrateful when people want to do that. So I'm glad we have that process.
Yes, sir.
I wish I had known that, but 5 months it's been in place.
Yes,
Has
sir.
it been utilized to your knowledge at all?
It has been utilized on more than one occasion. I had the other day, I was working in Battalion 9, and a wonderful family stopped by and said, we want to give you this television. And they kept driving. So I was a little uncomfortable with that, sir, standing there with the television in my hand, but we were able to track them down and determine who they were. And then, of course, we always follow up with a thank you as it relates to sending some sort of documentation. So we've captured that moment, and it's also documented at our local fire station level and up through the chain of command.
Because when I talked to the firefighters yesterday about this super-duper $100+ flashlight, they love it, they need it, they want it. It's very unique, and for them to go buy it themselves, where these folks in the community say, hey, we want to provide this to you, that's one example to say, you know what, it's an assistance with them. I wish the city provided that.
No, sir, the other thing, too, that I want to point out is our Fire Foundation is in the process of donating some flashlights to our folks as well. So one of the wonderful things that we have in place right now is, for example, we have other sponsors. You have the Crenshaw Christian Center that handles pretty much all of the south end of Los Angeles that are principal donators to us, as well as the First In Fire Foundation. But the reason we use our true foundation that we utilize is the Fire Foundation based on a letter of agreement that we have with them. But outside of that, the bigger issue I wanted to leave with you all, and the reason for my business card, please refer those calls to me so I can address them, send them on the right path, and we can make sure that not only do we appreciate what they get, we show the value in providing service to those members of the community.
That was the appreciation, that's the key.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks, Chief.
I just want to recognize Mr. Zine and thank you for bringing this forward. And the reason why I seconded this motion is because I, too, was in the same shoes of his resident, his constituent. As a senior lead officer, I've dealt with the Police Foundation and also with the LAPD booster at the Harbor Station. So you're saying the firehouse, each firehouse, can they establish their own booster?
Yes, that's part of our Adopt a Fire Station fund.
That's the Adopt a, okay,
Yes,
got it.
Adopt a Fire Station, yes, sir.
Got it. And just to know that Karen Wagner is with the Fire Foundation, she's just a blessing to this city, and I know she's going to lead this foundation, and will definitely be successful moving forward. But it's a testament to the city and the people who support our police and fire that the story that you just shared,
Yes, sir.
just dropping off a TV.
Yes.
They don't do that at police stations.
At police stations.
I didn't want to say that, sir.
Usually if they have a TV in their hand, they come in with pretty bracelets behind them, too.
My brother's with LAPD, so I tease him about that all the time. So.
Nonetheless.
Oh, your brother took the right direction.
Well, sir, there's always one in every family. So.
But as long as we make this, the process that's acceptable and it's smooth and, at no point we want to turn people around who want to give to our police and fire station, so.
Thank you both.
Thank you. And I just want to say this, we'll have this process wrapped up. Two things that we had to continue in the vetting process is because we also have things such as pancake breakfasts, or they want to do T-shirt sales. So we want to make sure all of that is covered. And then from there, I want to sit down with the fire administrator, June Gibson, to make sure that there is no fiscal impact to the city as it relates to maintenance or anything that may be required. And then I want to talk to our risk manager, and then post that conversation, I'll be speaking to our general counsel.
Excellent.
So that's the only reason for the delay at this point in time. And then, of course, the blessing of this gentleman seated to my right.
Thank you.
And then we'll move forward with that.
Yes, that's one of the things we've been talking to PD about as well, is they get a lot of technology, whether it's iPads or other things, donated through the foundation. And I've asked them numerous occasions to come back with a policy. They're working on it now as well. Mr. Tiefenk is here, and we've talked about that in the past as well. But the idea that, it's like getting a free horse, and then you got to feed it, and vet bills. And so you've got to really analyze what it is in terms of donations you're getting. So I appreciate that. Instead of receiving and filing this, Mr. Zine, I understand that, Chief, this has to go first. You're going to have a written policy that's going to come to the Fire Commission.
Yes.
And then why don't we hold it then in committee so we can come back and look at the written policy and approve it at that point?
Sure.
Very good.
And that will be in booklet form. And then to Councilmember Zine, to your point, when you talk about mirroring LAPD, because as Councilmember Buscaino pointed out, Karen Wagner came from LAPD.
Right, yes, she did.
And she was able to sit down with me and explain the importance of an expedient process. So I want you to know it mirrors it, although, different from the rank aspect, but it still goes through those same levels of approval to make sure we are not putting the city in any situation that would be uncomfortable.
When's the next, for those who are listening in at home, when's the next foundation dinner?
April 20th will be Fahrenheit 2013.
Okay, and who do they
event.
contact? What's the phone number? What's the website? We got to plug this. All right.
Go to the website, and it'll direct you right there. It's fantastic. And one thing, we mirror LAPD's policy except for the limit. We need to bring any donation value more than $5,000 to the full council for approval, whereas LAPD, it's $25,000.
Okay, so that'll be part of your recommendation that'll
Is
come to
to-
the commission and then
to
come
mirror
through
there.
back to this. Fantastic. We'll go ahead and
Very good.
support that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That'll conclude 21, so we'll go ahead and hold that and go on to item 2. And I think, does that finish off Fire Department?
Yes, it does.
I know it's extraordinary. It's completely and totally
Actually,
unusual for me to...
Your items,
Gentlemen,
sorry,
if you could
council members.
wait for 1 second.
13 and 14 are both police or fire department items. Are they?
13 and 14, but those are continued, sir.
Are they? Okay. 13 and 14 are continued.
Gentlemen, if you can wait for 1 second, as we stated, and ladies, and the Honorable, the President of the Commission as well, while it's not a time yet for applause, and this is only the foundation being built, and that's it, it is time for applause to recognize the leadership in this city and what you all have done in terms of putting the ship, turning it around, and putting it on the right path. And so for that, I think everybody in this room should applaud those who are standing. And thank you very much for your leadership. I think it's very appropriate. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it. With that, we'll go ahead and take item 2. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, can you please identify yourselves? Can you just identify yourselves for the record, please? Thanks, Cap.
Good morning. My name is Captain Patrick Smith. I'm the Assistant Commanding Officer of the Metropolitan Division, and also with me I have Lieutenant Dan Bunch. He's the OIC of our underwater dive team. In addition to Nancy Camerata, she's a Senior Management Analyst, and she's also in the OIC of our contract section.
Thank you. Thank you for your continued service to the city. The reason why I called this, and in reading my notes and looking at this item, I see that this has a lot to do with the Port of Los Angeles and securing and in making every effort to ensure that we prevent any terrorist attacks in one of the greatest assets in the city of Los Angeles. I appreciate that and look forward to move forward on this item. However, my other concern is ensuring that we have communication and coordination with the Port of Los Angeles Police Department. Are they aware of this?
Yes, they are. There's an actual steering committee down in the port that comprise all of both law enforcement, fire department, and the private sector that actually vote on whether or not the priority of these items is appropriate. And these items are actually going to get us in par with the Port PD and other agencies down in the port, so that we are actually able to communicate with them underwater and get us up to the level where we should be to communicate and to participate in operations.
So, do you know if the Port Police applied for this grant?
Port PD, Long Beach PD, pretty much every one of the agencies down there have gotten part of the money from the 2010 grant.
Okay.
What this particular money was fell out because it wasn't executed by one of the other agencies. I think it was down in the private sector. This was additional money that came back and was now re-voted on by all of the members, including the Port PD, to ensure that this was the highest priority. And this and a couple of items were the ones that were
very good
approved.
So Chief Boyd is aware of this.
100%.
With this grant, it will allow us to replace a lot of our equipment and also upgrade many of the items that we have. The reason we're pushing forward for approval is we only have a certain amount of time to utilize the money to bring ourselves up to par.
Very good. The other concern I had is ensuring that we communicate with Port Police whenever the operation or whenever your guys are down there, so they know who's down there at the same time.
Absolutely.
You know, I believe in the ICS system and coordination and communication, so we need to make sure we do that.
Oh, absolutely. As he mentioned earlier, there's full coordination, and we work with all the law enforcement agencies down in the port.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the item.
Okay, we'll go ahead and approve the item and accept the CAO's recommendation. Okay, that leaves us with one final item, number 4.
Item 4, LAPD report relative to status of malfunctioning or inactivated surveillance cameras in the downtown Los Angeles area, and to provide recommendations for quickly completing and funding any necessary repairs or improvements.
Good morning.
Good morning. Maggie Goodrich, I'm the CIO for the LAPD. I have Sergeant Dan Gomez with me, who heads my tactical technology section within Information Technology Bureau. I will give you an outline here of how I will proceed with my presentation. First, I will give you an overview of the process we undertook and the timeline for completing the task of the citywide camera assessment that was requested. Then I'll walk through the results of that assessment and discuss some efforts we are making to do some repairs and also put some preventative measures in place. And then lastly, I will touch upon the technology standards and baseline that Councilmember you had asked for as follow-up as well.
Right.
So with that, the process we followed and timeline are as follows. Last May, we had the request for a assessment, 1 of all the cameras in central area and then 2 of the rest of the city. In June, we contracted with a vendor who has an existing city contract to assist us with the assessment. They started in June in Central and did that assessment first, since that was called out explicitly in the public safety report. So they started in Central, they did that assessment. While they were doing that, Sergeant Gomez and his team in Tactical Technology section did a citywide inventory. So they went out and verified every location of every camera across the city, the quantities, and the operational status of every one of those cameras. From there, about that time, as they were concluding their work, they did that basically June through August. As they were wrapping that up, the vendor then agreed to do the citywide assessment for us as well. So they had finished their assessment of Central. We then asked them to basically spend October and November going out and taking the inventory that Sergeant Gomez had created for the rest of the city, go out and do an assessment and take a look at those cameras that we found to be non-operational and figure out why they're non-operational and what it would take to make them operational and come up with involved costs and such.
Do we have a status report on that citywide assessment and what we found were inoperative?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'll be providing you that information as well.
Excellent.
So the vendor performed that assessment. They wrapped that up in about end of November. They provided us with a formal proposal now, end quote, in January. And I'm now back from maternity leave and here in front of you. So let me walk you through the results of those assessments. So we have 368 cameras citywide.
How many?
368.
Okay.
What we found is that 299 of those 368 are operational. There were no problems with 299 of them. Of the non-operational cameras, 30 of those were in Central. And they were actually divided up among 3 disparate systems, 3 different camera systems that had been installed over time in Central Division. So what we did first was for Central specifically, we received a proposal to actually take those 3 disparate systems, repair everything, and actually combine that into one system, so that Central has now one system to look at instead of 3. That proposal was funded by UASI 09 funding, and actually this committee approved that funding at your last hearing. So we appreciate that, and that work is actually underway now. We started it as soon as committee could approve it, and we expect that that work in Central will be completed within the next 30 days.
Okay. So that would leave us with another 39 inoperative?
Correct. So those are spread out in various areas across the city. The proposal to and cost estimate to repair the remaining is approximately $300,000. I did submit a budget request in the 13-14 budget process to cover those costs. I'm hoping to see that they're included in the budget, and certainly I'll be asking for your support when it comes time for our budget hearing. But the hope is that that is funded, and then as soon as July 1 kicks in and we're able to move forward with the 13-14 budget, we get that work underway.
Fantastic.
Lastly, one of the other things we're doing is to make sure that this doesn't happen again where we have cameras fall into disrepair. We're working with General Services on a maintenance agreement citywide for all of our cameras, and that will include not only the 368 cameras that I've mentioned that were part of this inventory, but we now have also essentially inherited additional cameras from the absorbing OPS. So now we have those cameras as well. So we're working with GSD to come up with a maintenance agreement that will cover all of those cameras.
How many cameras do we know are in OPS?
So currently there's over 350 cameras that are controlled by the former OPS.
And those were, have we done an assessment? The citywide assessment obviously didn't include those because those were internal with another department.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to do an assessment on those, on if they're operative?
Yes.
And the technology as well?
And they have a process in place that we've been following where we are notified whenever the individuals who were part of our OPS identify a camera that's down. They actually identify the issue. We notify the vendor. They go out and do an assessment. So all of that work, though, has been done sort of on a one-off basis. Something goes down and they repair it. So they will just include that in a maintenance agreement so that we don't have to do kind of a one-off process. Lastly, Mr. Chair, you had asked for some follow-up as far as technology standards and the technology baseline for all of our camera systems. I've provided a handout this morning that lists all of our technology standards. That is what we use in any contract for any new camera system. That is really what we require, and what that will allow for basically is if all of our systems meet those standards, we'll ensure that all of our systems are interoperable. We'll ensure that they're all vendor agnostic so we can get competitive pricing. We don't have a proprietary system. And we'll also ensure that every solution can be tailored to the operational needs of the area. Some areas need a much larger solution than others, that type of thing.
I looked through the list and I appreciate the specs, and just a cursory look at it. I just had some questions on a few things if you could report back on. One, I didn't see a log viewer, so we can, if it's necessary, if under an assessment, if there's an incident, we can go back and actually look at an events log and a user login to see if events were either manipulated or deleted, or who had access and control. So I would think it's available off-the-shelf technology with most of these systems. I didn't know if we had night vision capabilities required for infrared. Most cameras do have that now, I know. So I didn't see that as one of the requirements. Any zoom or pan, tilt type technology, if that was required at all. Any time-lapse recording information. so it could clearly show and indicate timestamp information on the tapes. I didn't see anything about wiring and power capabilities for backup or weather environments for power or wire. Did not see anything on PC or DVR type backup capabilities, if there was any requirement on those, and any capture, if need be, on audio. There was no indication about any audio, if that was part of any capabilities or a requirement. So those are the few things that just, and I'm not an expert, I'm just a tech junkie, but in any event, those are the few things that I just caught in looking at the list just now that I didn't see on there. If those are things that have been looked at, I'm guessing they probably have. But
yes.
If those would require just further analysis and to come back, or we'll go ahead and approve this. But if you want to, we can do that offline, and if you want to report back to me, I don't know that needs to come to full committee unless my colleagues have a great interest in the technological components that I brought up. But I'd like to turn it over to them for any questions.
An interest, but not much knowledge. So, no, I don't need to hear that back in committee. But what I am concerned about, and we can either hear it here in budget, you talked about the maintenance agreement for the OPS cameras. I assume that you're talking about between LAPD and General Services for maintenance, or are you talking about with the vendors?
With the vendor.
Okay, so what is the policy when we purchase cameras with regard to service agreements? And warranties, yeah.
All of our systems typically come with the first year of warranty and maintenance included. After that, it's really dependent upon the source of funding. Some of our funding sources prefer to fund all the maintenance up front, and we typically ask for a minimum of 3 years if we can. Some of the funding sources, however, prefer to fund maintenance a year at a time or 2 years at a time and come back. That's not the way we necessarily prefer to do it, but sometimes, because of budgetary constraints and the like, we do have funding sources who will ask that they be able to fund maybe in 2-year increments or 1-year increments rather than the 3 that we prefer.
Okay. Well, I think it should certainly be our policy that we purchase the longest possible service agreement that is allowed by that funding source. But I'd be interested if you can, when you bring it back, and again, I guess some component of this at least is going to come to budget. I'd like to see the breakdown of how those funding sources break out, if you don't mind. It
Sure.
may be just by category. It doesn't have to be each individual one, but sort of the categories of the funding sources that have been used for funding the purchases of these, and how they differentiate the service and warranty requirements.
And some of that is that a lot of these systems were also donated, and so sometimes it's hard to dictate that.
That Mr. Aikman described, and it's a perfect example.
Right.
Because very often you'll get, a neighborhood council or something that will want to go out and purchase a camera. But if we don't mandate some service and warranty requirement as part of acceptance of that gift, we're going to have this become a continuing problem or a continuing drain on the budget, one or the other.
And what we've implemented internally is with our police foundation in particular is anything that's going to the police foundation that has any sort of technology component to it comes to me now before it goes to them. So that will help.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just amend what the request of the committee will be, if I could then. Do we have a hold on council for this yet?
We do not.
Okay. So when this does come to council, why don't we go ahead and release it to committee, but do the following. Have the report updated on the technology standards to include warranty and surveillance agreements, as well as the funding sources outlined. That will be one of the requirements.
Warranty and service.
Yes, correct, the warranty and service agreements. As well as the other technological components that I spoke of to be at least addressed, whether it would be required or not, but at least it's addressed. And if I can go through those very quickly once again so you have them, but it's night vision capabilities, log and user event log requirements, zoom or pan and tilt requirements, time lapse, wiring and power, PC or DVR backup capabilities, and if any audio, or if it has audio, what the audio requirement would be. With that,
I got a couple.
Mr. Zine.
Couple of questions on it. So we have a total of 718 between the LAPD and General Services.
Approximately, yes.
And with the numbers you gave, 368 and 350, that's what I'm going by. How does Little Tokyo put in cameras that never plugged into the department? How does that work?
I know.
Does someone monitor to make sure that when there's installation, that there's a follow-through? It says in the report, 6 cameras purchased for Little Tokyo area were never plugged into LAPD's monitoring bank. So who's responsible to make sure that they're actually plugged in to be working?
So, Councilmember, so now, under the new process where everything is vetted through Ms. Goodrich and ITB, so my section project manages almost all these installations now. So when everything's done, we'll go over, we make sure that before system sign-off occurs, that everything's installed, everything's functional, all the training occurs. We do a validation test before we do the sign-off. We even do a small test where we make sure that there's stability within the system before we do system sign-off. Prior to this, there wasn't that kind of sign-off. From this point forward, that'll occur on every installation.
And how are the ones working that I paid for in West Valley and Topanga?
Yeah, those are all operational. We did that exact same process that I just described. So we've actually implemented it even prior to yours, where we would go out, we would do that, we would have a project manager on hand, and working in conjunction with whatever division, in that case Topanga and West Valley, we work with the officers there to ensure that that was happening. And at the very, very end, we do all the system sign-offs, we go through the checklist and make sure everything that was promised that would be delivered is functional and is in fact delivered.
And then the issue of DOT. DOT has hundreds of cameras throughout the city of Los Angeles. Who maintains those cameras? Because DOT, I've been to their surveillance center, and I've seen the cameras. They've got basically every intersection in the city of Los Angeles, hundreds of cameras, if not thousands. Who maintains that system?
So we're currently working with DOT, and the ATSAC is specifically the ones that you're referring to. We're working with them to get all the information to see how we can better collaborate. We have brought in some of those feeds already into Racer. They get the feeds there. The Emergency Operations Center gets those feeds. It is a larger question of how we integrate those, because they are two separate systems.
Who maintains it? Who does the service? Because someone's got to...
Yeah, I can't tell you that.
That's DOT does.
Well,
I believe DOT does, but I don't know if they use a vendor.
We're talking about cameras. We're talking about surveillance cameras, and we should have some kind of coordination, since Racer can tap into those cameras for emergency purposes. We should have some ability to figure out who's servicing those, and maybe we can have some kind of coordinated operation between servicing to maintain the stability of those cameras that they're working.
And I've been in touch with one of the chiefs at DOT who is putting us in touch with his subject matter expert so that we can work on that together.
Because, duplicate efforts doesn't really work too well. You got IT, you got DOT. I mean, somebody's maintaining those systems. And I've been down to DOT, the surveillance, ATSAC, to see it, and it's a very effective system. I'm just wondering, somehow we can tie it together.
That's an excellent point, and I'll make sure that we raise that when we meet with them.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you. There's no public comment, so that will conclude the Public Safety Committee meeting. Thank you very much.
Did you ever see DOT?
I'm actually...
You got a whole battery of them.